Welcome to A Year in the Bible with Daily Grace. From Eden to eternity, the Bible tells one big story of redemption. My name is Tiffany, and I want to spend a few minutes with you every day walking through the Bible chronologically. Together, we will explore God's sovereign plan as the events of Scripture unfold and point to Jesus. Hey, Year in the Bible family, Tiffany here. Welcome back to the podcast. Our journey through Nehemiah continues today as God's people face opposition from their enemies and discouragement among their ranks. But across chapters 4 through 6, we will glimpse what servant-led godly leadership looks like. With each obstacle the nation faces, Nehemiah seeks the Lord's counsel and leads the people wisely. His actions serve as a great example for us, whether we lead a few people or many. A heart that finds their strength in the Lord alone has nothing and no one to fear. We closed yesterday with many hands working to complete the wall around Jerusalem. As we come to chapter 4 today, opposition from the governors in the surrounding regions discouraged the people. Sanballat and Tobiah mock the Jewish people and question their ability to restore themselves. But what they don't understand is that it is God who will restore them, and no one can thwart his plan. But Nehemiah does understand, and his response is to seek the Lord in prayer and ask him to avenge the people against these foes. Nehemiah then leads the people in prayer and creates a plan to guard the city day and night as the project continues. Nehemiah's leadership displayed reliance on God and faithful action in the face of opposition. He spurs them on in chapter 4, verse 14, when he reminds the people, "Don't be afraid of them. Remember the great and awe-inspiring Lord." The remainder of chapter 4 then details how half the people worked while the other half stood guard, and each man held a tool in one hand and a weapon in the other. They trusted that God had frustrated the plan of their enemies and that he would fight for his people, as he always had. But while chapter 4 focused on Israel's outward enemies, chapter 5 focuses on the internal issues that threatened the nation. Many of the people came to Nehemiah and cried out over the injustice being committed against them by their own people. Remember, King Artaxerxes' letter named Nehemiah the governor of the region, so the people brought their grievances to him. As we saw in chapter 3, everyone came to help rebuild the wall, thus neglecting their own fields and homes. They had no way to make money, and on top of that, the local officials were charging them large sums in tax and interest. Once again, Nehemiah wisely responds and calmly confronts his fellow officials. And he does so by reminding them what God says in his word concerning the issue. In Exodus 22:25, we read, "If you lend silver to my people, to the poor person among you, you must not be like a creditor to him. You must not charge him interest." God expected more of his people. He expected them to love others and for their testimony to be a witness to the surrounding nations. By charging interest and taxing their fellow Israelites, they were no different. The officials wisely repented and acted accordingly by ceasing their interest payments and returning what they had taken. Nehemiah allowed the word of the Lord to convict, not his own words. Nehemiah was also a living example to the nation. As the governor of the region for 12 years, he had special privileges. But instead of indulging or taking advantage of the people, he didn't burden them further by taking more than was necessary to survive. Nehemiah feared the Lord and desired to serve him. This example of servant leadership overflowed into his daily actions. Nehemiah was an honorable leader and served the Lord and the people well. We close today with chapter 6. While the inward threats among the Israelites were remedied, the outward threats persisted. But God would prove ever faithful in his preservation and restoration of Israel. Sanballat, Tobiah, and Geshem saw that the rebuilding continued, and they asked Nehemiah to come and meet them. Nehemiah rightly discerned that these men would harm him should he go. He refused this request 4 times, and then, the 5th time, Sanballat sent a message recounting so-called rumors that Nehemiah planned to rebel and set himself up as king over Judah. In essence, they were threatening that these rumors could easily reach King Artaxerxes if Nehemiah didn't meet with them. Nehemiah rebukes these men for their invented rumors, and he continues the work, asking the Lord to strengthen his hands. Another tactic was tried against Nehemiah, and this one from within the city. A man tried to get Nehemiah to enter the temple and hide. This man had been hired by Tobiah and Sanballat. Nehemiah discerned his evil plan, and he was not intimidated, nor did he sin by entering the temple, which was only the job of the priests and Levites. Though Tobiah continued to send letters to intimidate Nehemiah, and though some of the Judean officials followed Tobiah, Nehemiah was their rightful leader, and he had earned the respect of his people. And after just 52 days, the walls and gates surrounding Jerusalem were complete. God had accomplished this task through his people and protected them every step of the way. We don't want to miss how God used Nehemiah throughout this process. In a world where people will follow one flashy leader after another, Nehemiah serves as a great example of the type of godly leadership we must aspire to and follow. Nehemiah was a servant. He was a prayer warrior. He sought his strength from the Lord. He relied on God's statutes and commands to solve problems, and he had a discerning heart. Nehemiah wasn't perfect, but his desire was to lead as God would have him lead. In whatever capacity we might be leading others, may our hearts exemplify servant leadership that relies on God to strengthen our hands. Thanks for joining me today. I'll meet you back here tomorrow. Bye, friends.